Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the tie to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneur. I love that funky music. I say that a lot, but it's delicious. I wish, I'm going to have my team make that intro a little bit longer because it's just fun to kind of groove to get you in the mood. Hey, hello, Thomas Selfrick. I'm the host of this lovely channel called Never Been Promoted, where we're here on a mission to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. But at the root of a lot of this is this idea of to unleash this entrepreneur within you. You got to kind of cut the tie to a lot of things holding you back. And that could be the way you think, things you presume to be true, the senses of entitlement or excuses you make, fears, or maybe some people in your life you just kind of need to part ways with. Sometimes that's what it is. You got one life. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to make some hard decisions sometimes and make some changes for yourself and how you think to get there. So that's what we're helping people to do. This is your first time here. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you can make it through the whole show. And if you've been here before, thanks for coming back. If you like the show, take a moment, go to youtube.com @neverbeenpromoted and give us a subscribe. And if you're listening on your favorite, podcast, Apple, Spotify, what have you, take a moment to do a 5-star review. It means a lot for the community, the guests, and all the mission work that we're trying to do to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship. Now, today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Julie Pham. She is an author of 7 Forms of Respect. It's kind of like the 5 love languages, but for the words of respect. So I'm curious to hear what those are all about. And she's also the founder and CEO of Curiosity Based. And this is where they work with organizations to help them learn how to use and practice curiosity in the workplace to improve communication, collaboration, make it more fun and actually way more productive at the same time too. So we're going to join her into the studio. There she is. She's here. The doctor.
Hi there, Thomas.
Now, are you like can you do surgeries? Doctor?
No, I'm a PhD in history.
In medical emergency, don't offer.
Do not call me. Do not call me. I will not be the person on the plane. Yes.
I can write a paper about it. Like I can't help you. Right. Very, very nice to meet you. Where are you joining from today?
I am calling in from Seattle.
Seattle. Thank you for Starbucks, guys. Really appreciate it. I don't know if actually it's from there originally, but I think I think they're from there. Are they there?
This is where we have our headquarters. I actually can't remember if it was the very first store, if it was from here or not, but I don't either. This is where it became big.
Yeah, right. I don't think actually Starbucks coffee it's not my favorite. They're probably never going to be a sponsor for me to say it. Anyway. Let's do a little icebreaker, something fun. I love to ask this question because the answer is all over the place. But if you were to be arrested and no one, people, friends, family have heard you've been arrested, what are they going to presume you did?
Oh, gosh. Probably a car accident.
Oh, you hit somebody?
Yeah, I hit someone. Yeah, I'm not a great driver.
Indicating you're a bad driver? Are you admitting that you're a bad driver?
I am. I will say that I got into 3 accidents before I turned 18. How about that? And I actually think that helped increase my risk tolerance. So.
By taking more risks?
Yes, by taking more risks, because it was like, I'm still here. So
maybe you're a cat and you're like just burning through the lives right now. And you're like, hey, listen, I gave you 3. Like, let's quit. Let's pull it back here a little bit.
So yes, it would be for it would have been for a car accident that someone got hurt. Really
if you get arrested for a car accident, it's got to be like negligent. Like you had to be blitzed out of your mind, drunk. Or 150,000 miles per hour going down to 30. Like that one might be your light speed.
Yes, something. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
I like that.
Fun question.
All right. Well, you're so you have author of 7 Forms of Respect. If you have the book, show it. It'd be cool actually to see it. And we were discussing off camera that's like the 5 languages of love, but for respect. So we'll definitely dive into that. And I think that certainly has an overlay with this idea of curiosity in the workplace, because curiosity, brainstorming, like asking questions that maybe, why do we always do this? Or curious of why, the whys and the hows sometimes rub people wrong, and then they get disrespectful, they get defensive. And I'd love to see where that overlay comes maybe as we have this adventure. But do you want to start with first, just, kind of your company, what it does high level, and back into just enough story to say, hey, this is how I got here, and this is why I wrote
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
And you get the 4.
So, yeah.
I'll do some
Okay. All
social
right.
media
So, curiosity
publishing.
based, we help organizations who want to invest in relationship building and fostering trust and collaboration and curiosity at work. And so, the key moments in starting my business, I got to tell you that I left a job that I love. I know a lot of people, they have their entrepreneur story. It's just, oh, they hated their job and that's the reason why they started a company. I actually left the best job I ever had. And that was because I realized the only way I could own my intellectual property, the only way I could have my name attached to things is if I took the risk and started my own company. And so that is what I did. I started thinking about this in the fall of 2021, and I officially opened January 1st, the fall of 2020. Sorry. So we're in the middle of the pandemic. And then I officially started January 1st, 2021.
Would but why leave the best job of your life?
Yeah.
Most people, I mean, most almost like with like
Mhm.
almost a 99 percentile who have I had on here go, there was something missing. Maybe not unhappy, but there was definitely something missing. I guess you didn't say you're unhappy. Maybe what was missing, maybe that
It
made
was,
you.
it wasn't, I know a lot of people say follow your passion. It wasn't, I was actually doing work that I was really passionate about. I felt called though to start my business. And I think that there's a
Uh-huh.
difference between passion and calling. And so with a calling, it's just, I felt the world calling to me and I need to respond because it didn't make logical sense. I mean, I was an executive at a nonprofit doing really great mission-based work and secure in the middle of the pandemic. And so it did not make sense for me to leave my job, right? And yet I felt called because it was just I have this message I want to share with the world and I want to be able to put my name on it. And part of that was because I was doing a lot of work around diversity and leadership diversity in the workforce, and yet what I saw was um, a lot of the leadership books that we're reading were were written by white men. And the analogy I like to use is that of theater, actually, we can be diversifying the actors, changing the
Mhm.
actors, and yet they're reading the same scripts. And give me Adam Grant, Stephen Covey. It's more about how do we enlarge the pool. And so I felt, you know what? I feel called to put my name on it and to also help promote other authors and to diversify leadership narratives and to think of this with an abundance mindset, not a
Yeah.
scarcity mindset.
Well, and dive in. So some people don't know what that is. There are 2 types of people in this world: those who love Neil Diamond, and those who don't. So I love Neil Diamond, so everybody else doesn't exist. But but abundance mindset. So talk about that a bit. So just because it's an
To believe
interesting
that there's
mindset to have.
more, yes. To believe that there is more and that generosity begets generosity, that we don't have to be limited. And Thomas, that was actually quite a change for me because growing up, I saw modeled uh, in my family, sometimes it was just very competitive,
Mhm.
which is, oh, if that person has that, that means I don't have that. And if I have something, that means they don't get something. And yet, what I've learned as an entrepreneur is no, actually, if we help each other out, we just create more opportunities for one another.
Well, you're spot on. Hence why I started this channel,
Mhm.
because the idea is if I could bring more entrepreneurs together, I knew that they would have more opportunities, and they would, also I would get more opportunity from just implicitly helping others, and truly, because you get a couple bad eggs that are more on the user scarcity side and competitive
Mhm.
side, and they don't really last long in community of entrepreneurship because people kind of like that person's just for themselves. Like they're not here to help anyone else but themselves. Now, sometimes they're wildly successful financially, but just as lonely. And you meet them and they're there. So, what are the 7 forms of respect? Do you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah. So the 7 forms of respect, we like to use the acronym PICCA, PPICCAA. And so what it stands for is procedure, punctuality, information, candor, consideration, acknowledgement, and attention. And so the idea here is that we can agree on how respect feels, to feel seen, heard, appreciated, acknowledged. What we disagree about is what does it look like? So, Thomas, for example, maybe you want to be CC'd on all emails, and other people, someone else says, no, only email me if I have an action, if you need me to do something. Otherwise, don't fill up my inbox. I don't need to know everything. And
I
so,
you
and
can
so those little
email my
things,
AI everything. That's for sure. Sure. You
and
can
so those
email my
little
AI. don't
Mhm,
email me. I probably won't reply
mhm.
anyway.
Yeah, and so
Sorry,
and
I didn't
some
mean to
people
interrupt you
might
there, but
yeah,
that's a good mentality shift for some people. But
yeah, and so what it gets at, though, is that respect is we talk about respect as if it's fixed and universal, as if we mean the same thing. Respect one another, and yet, actually, respect is it's relative, it's dynamic, it's subjective, and it's also contradictory, and it's contradictory because we as humans are contradictory, and so, actually, at the heart of 7 forms of respect, it's about how to be curious about respect. How do we get curious about it? How do we practice inward curiosity and think, "Huh, how do I want respect? Why? What's that based on?" And then how do I get curious about how other people want respect and to assume that they might want it differently than me. And that doesn't mean that's not respect. It just means we have different ways of seeing it and describing it.
and when you're in the like so in the forms of respect, right? Like where do you think maybe most people or organizations fall apart?
I think that they fall apart by trying to be prescriptive and saying this is the way that you have to be, and also not actually having a good sense of what matters to them. So I think sometimes people get into in organizations get into this perfectionist mode. We need to be this and do this and do this. And then, but what they're not really asking is, does it really matter the to the purpose of our work? So for example, I didn't have this language back then, but when I first worked in the corporate world, I could say that information was really important to them, candor was super important to them, and acknowledgement was very important. What was not important was punctuality, and what was not important was attention. And so to be unapologetic about that and say, "Hey, this is what matters to us. This is why, and this is what we deprioritize." So what we prioritize and what we deprioritize. So it's important for organizations to be okay with what they prioritize and also what they don't prioritize. And I think a lot of times organizations say, "Oh, we should do this, 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 and this." And it's just like sometimes they're actually going to contradict. And so how to have some self-awareness around this. Thomas, I'll say that one of the things when I work with clients and I'll pull them on, hey, what causes misalignment around respect, understanding respect in the organization. And one of the things that people check off a lot is lack of clarity from leadership.
Huh.
Lack of
I
clarity from leadership
can't
because
imagine that.
yeah,
A lot of times I don't think leadership knows. I think that's
yeah,
a
because they actually haven't they think about what's nice to have, and what they don't realize is sometimes they're not even doing this thing that they say. So people are doing following what you do, not what you say. So just having some self-awareness there.
what's an do you have a like a exemplary use case, like what was their problem? What did you like? How? Because I don't understand how it would work in a corporate world. Like I feel like every time I was in these kind of corporate things and they put together something like this, it felt a little too kumbaya-ish, and like nothing ever changed, and it's like it
Mhm.
just wasted 20 hours
Yeah,
and a
yeah. Well,
couple of
and so
weeks,
I
and then
think
like oh, no, nothing
so
changed. So like, what do you do to get around that? Or what's an example
so I
use
think
case?
it's really talking about behaviors. And talking about the behaviors of why it actually matters and what happens if we don't do it. So for example, when we take organizations through this, we'll ask them, "Hey, what are the top 3 forms of respect that are currently practiced right now?" And then we talk about why. And then we talk about, well, what's the nature of your work? What do you actually require? And then we talk about, well, what are the ideal ones? So for example, there could be an organization that was really focused on punctuality, and what they realized was like we don't actually have this. We don't need. There's not this absolute urgency to our work. We don't need to be so fixated on that. And so let's change that and prioritize something else. And so then it gives people a space to talk about, what do we actually need versus what's nice to have. Another one that comes up a lot is people say, "Hey, we want candor." So I remember with one organization, they're just, "We really want candor. It's really important." The CEO was like, "Yeah, I practice candor all the time." And then we took them through this. And what became clear was half that team, half the leadership team got really angry and they didn't want to practice it. They didn't want to do it, including the CEO. And so what it gets at is all of the forms are actually quite difficult to do. So how do we, I use the word, Thomas, a lot, practice. How do we practice it? Because we're never going to get there. It's kind of if we don't keep working at it, then we can get flabby. And to talk about, well, what does that mean in this setting? Is candor, do we do it publicly or one on one? and to get at that level of granularity and to just continue returning to it. But sometimes we've seen with organizations, oh, we wanted to do this, but it's actually too we've got it it's too hard. And then like in that there's another discussion. Or actually there's so much pain associated with it, and it's like maybe we don't need it as much.
Well, you get an organization where people have been there 15, 20 years. Maybe there's a changing of the guard, the leadership, or they're just things gotten stagnant, and they've maybe done a feedback summary that says, "Hey, and then then your leadership team's there, and you're thinking you're at that. I'm thinking, there's no way this group's changing. It's like,
Mhm.
at some point, some people are so close to retirement, they're like, I'm just gonna do whatever needed to get through the 2-3 years. Like I've been in organizations like that, where respect was verbalized the most and absolutely practiced the least.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, and I think sometimes it's actually just, are we on the same page of even what respect means here? And so that's actually the first step. It's just like, what does respect look like at this organization and why? Because if we and to form stories and narratives around that, this is what happens when we didn't do this, and this is what happens when we do it, and to be able to, because I think of curiosity as this practice, and it comes down to self awareness, relationship building, and clear communication. And that clear communication part, Thomas, is about giving specific examples and stories. And I think a lot of times in what you were describing as that kumbaya, just
mhm.
very fluffy, it's just that's because a lot of times people spend so much time wordsmithing, right? They get into these, do we use this verb or that verb? No, just tie it to the actions or the
I
behaviors.
remember being in a meeting, and I'm not kidding, for like 3.5 hours, 30-minute meeting scheduled. 3.5 hours later, we're still there, debating if we should use the word client or customer.
I
And
totally
I'm in
believe
this
that.
meeting
I
for
totally
three and a half
believe
hours,
that.
and I'm not, I haven't said a word. I'm not even sure why I'm there at this point, because it was like two people arguing about it in front of like 20 people, and there are two executive leaders that you couldn't be like, "Hey, shut it, and let's go back to something." And so I can't imagine, like, in something like that, the disrespect is the waste of time of everyone there to hear two people who had said, "Hey, let's talk about this," and never asked one person for their opinion.
Mhm.
And the environment that we're in, I was like, I know what you mean by this, like where you get this, like where you need something like this, but you have these two leaders that talked about respect and they want everyone included in the conversations, but then they get into a meeting, only those two would talk.
Mhm.
They would
Mhm,
never
mhm.
ask, and you were certainly judged if you interrupted. And it's like,
Yes.
I'm here for 2.5 hours. I can't. At that point, there was no like phones, like it was like BlackBerry time, so you couldn't even like play a game and occasionally look down or something like that. It was like you're sitting there just zoning out. Like, I mean, it was like traumatic. Like, I think I may have PTSD from it. I may have to lay down. Um, but when you get these environments like that, right? Do you ever get into a client situation where the people who brought you in, you got to kind of pull them aside and say, "You're the problem"?
Oh gosh. I mean,
I mean, they're the ones stroking the check, and you got to be like, "Listen, here's the thing."
yeah. So actually, like the way that we like to work, and we were talking about abundance mindset before, is we like to come in and stir things up and say, "Hey, here's all of the poll results and stuff," and then we can bring in other consultants who are going to do that hand-on coaching. Like, hey, these are all the issues that are coming. I like just to come in and do that first initial
Right.
and say, here's the data, and then and work with other consultants who will point out all the, because
So
that
you'll go
that
to
work actually kicks
identify
in
the
one-on-one.
issues and
Mhm.
not try to solve where
Yeah.
the thing
Yeah. No, I
is.
like to surface the issues. And this is where going back to having a network of referral partners who do different things. Because there are also some people who are really good at that wordsmithing and who can actually who are really good at getting clients to go be to is it customer or client and do that pretty quickly. I don't like that work.
Right.
So mhm.
Well,
It sounds
and
like you got a bad
that's the hard
facilitator.
work. And so that's where I go back to my original statement is like, so, it's the notion of change, right? It's one thing to talk about it, identify it, but to be respectful, like, like you said, you have to get the same page, and that means different for an organization. That's one thing, but for me, it's disrespectful if you just placate. Like, I want to hear that is a dumb idea. I may not take it really well at sometimes, but depends who says it to. But the point is, but if someone's like, "Oh, great idea," like, or like they go along with stuff, it's disrespectful because it ends up hurting you long term. Like, that wasn't, and you knew it. And why didn't you speak up? Like, so that reversely, someone else might find it like, well, if you challenge me, that's disrespect. So
Yeah.
how
So
do
I'm
how do you
gonna
do it at a nuance
so
level for
so
individuals? Like,
basically I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about how respect in an organization lives in layers, and also I'm going to talk about the difference between respect and disrespect.
the
So
floor is yours.
yes. So with the how respect lives in layers in an organization. So if you look at the a organization where there's the CEO, the leadership team, what they do, not what they just say, but what they do, that is those like to use the analogy of a language. That's the national language. And then you look at the different departments. There could be marketing, engineering, finance, and they also have their own leaders and they also have their own functions. And so they will also have their own prioritized forms of respect that depend on the individual leader and also the function of the work. And I call that the regional dialects. And then there's me, the individual, what I personally like, my own priorities. And that can be different from when I'm with certain teams and when I'm with the org as a whole. And so people who are most successful in any organization, those are the people who can be multilingual. I can go to different organizations and I can I'm multilingual. I can switch. And so that is it requires actually flexibility and requiring understanding. I'm not being hypocritical here. I'm actually just understanding that different teams or when I'm in different contexts, they need different things. And so that's one thing. And at the same time, it's just I could be in a setting which is I'm really this is not working for me. This is I keep stretching and stretching and stretching. I have what I call the rubber band rule, which is I normally have a rubber band near me, but we can stretch and stretch and stretch until we break. And so at that point, it's just understanding this is not going to work for me. And it's fine if the organization does that. I shouldn't be here. And then the other thing I want to say is because there's a difference between respect and disrespect. Disrespect is actually intentional. It's intentional. Thomas, I know you don't like it, and I did it anyway. And then there's what I call the lack of respect in the forms that matter to you. Maybe Thomas, I did something and you don't like it, and I was just applying the golden rule on you. I was just doing what would be respectful for me, what I would like. Or maybe I just don't know you that well. Or maybe Thomas, you kept saying it was okay that I do that thing, but inside you're simmering. So actually, a lot of this is actually knowing that it's about getting curious about curiosity. Or curious about respect. We're never going to perfectly respect people all the time. It's just how do we engage in the conversation to see why is this bothering you? Because maybe it didn't bother you yesterday and today it's bothering you.
What advice do you give to an entrepreneur who's kind of building their organization from the get go? So maybe they're solopreneur that's about to start doing their first hires. Like,
Mm.
how do they incorporate these notions of and I want to get into curiosity a bit as
Yeah,
well
yeah,
too.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
start with respect, and then we'll pivot over to curiosities.
So
How they do
yeah.
that? Because I wouldn't
So
know.
I actually think that the forms of respect that you prioritize can change depending on the stage of your company. It can even depend on the stage of your work if you are say more campaign based or product based. And so to understand that actually it's about being flexible. It's about knowing, hey, this is what it is right now and this is the reason for it right now. And so to actually say what are the top three forms of respect that are practiced within our company? So for curiosity base, information is one of them. That's because we're a small team of 5 and we're remote and we need to be able to everyone needs to be able to have that access to the information. I as the CEO, that's not the one I particularly individually prefer. And so actually part of it is the CEO or the leader saying what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for me. And to be able to define why that is at that stage. And then to be able to later on evaluate maybe 6 months, a year or 2 years, does this still make sense? And then going back to a lack of clarity from leadership is one of the big reasons that causes misalignment and respect in an org. And so trying to be clear about those 3 and then saying like, look, these other ones, it's not like they're not good. It's just like we're not going to prioritize them.
Well, okay, so pivot over to the idea of curiosity. So
Mhm.
I always look at curiosity as just like it's abundant, it's unrestricted in children. Um, and I love it because you see it and they remind you of like, man, I used to, you know, look at a rock and wonder so many little things. Now you just, step on it, move on your way. Uh, and that's kind of, I'm not going to ask you why, maybe, unless your field of study is like why curiosity has died,
No.
and by the time you get to work, but what does it mean to be curious? Like, hey, is it, is it peeking in someone's lunch while it's in the refrigerator there and going, oh, what are they going to eat? Or is it,
Mhm.
looking at, why we do a process the way we always
Yeah.
do it, and asking that question?
So I think of curiosity as a practice. A lot of people describe it as a trait. You either have it or you don't have it, and kids have it a lot. I actually think we all have it,
Yeah.
and we can have environments that encourage it or discourage it. And so that practice of curiosity, the first one, what it looks like is that self-awareness. So that's inward curiosity. I have to actually get curious about myself. Why do I care about respect in the ways that I do? What's that based on? How do and then the second one is relationship building. And so that is, how do I get curious about other people? How do I then react, share my interpretations of what they're sharing with me, and then also how do I share myself with them? So that back and forth curiosity, the inward and outward curiosity, it forms reciprocity, and that's at the core of relationship building. And the third element is clear communication. So how do I listen to understand? How do I ask questions to understand? And how do I share specific examples and stories? And so it's not just one thing. I think a lot of people think of curiosity as someone who asks a lot of questions. I think
I
curiosity,
would have fallen into that
right?
trap.
Right. And so
You would
in
have those
that, and
barbed wires shooting up. I would have been like right in it, just pinned on dead. Would have
right.
fallen in
And
that trap.
so, and actually, in the way when we think of the practice, it's no, actually listening. Listening is a form. It helps with practicing curiosity. And I have to be so clear with my own stories, because I think a lot of people talk about curiosity as if it's just outward. Thomas, I'm going to ask you all these questions and learn all about you, but I'm never going to share myself.
Yeah, that's how I usually operate. It's a I will tell you though, so but that's true. Like sometimes you protect yourself too, by not doing that. And
Mhm.
it's also taught by asking questions. It's a form of ways to connect with people. Now, maybe not specifically curiosity based. Hear a little background noise there, sorry.
Sorry,
Uh,
it's the lawnmower.
oh, that's a high pitched note. That's a high rev lawnmower right there. I thought maybe someone was shaving right next to it.
No.
Um, just shaving the yard, just getting down fairway level. She's a golfer on the weekends, guys. She can hit a flop shot. I'm not gonna hit stuff
Yeah,
up.
I'm a floor above and we can hear it. So, but
No worries. I was just making sure it's not like, was there a bomb about to go off? Was someone not being respectful to your podcast? I'm curious to learn why. Uh, so with the idea of curiosity and asking questions, part of it sounds like there's a word of intent of
yes,
why versus the placate or just avoid sharing your own things. So could
mhm.
you speak to the idea and notion of how intent and how then it becomes a conversation, less so of me interrogating what you're
Yeah, actually, I love that question because I think a lot of times people say assume good intent. And I am actually not a fan of assume good intent. I'm a fan of find out what the intent was. Because the difference between good intent and bad intent is I like you or I don't like you. I trust you or I don't trust you. Two people can do the exact same thing. And if I like someone, then they had good intent. And if I don't like them, then they had bad intent. So, for example, maybe to Bob sends me lots of reminders on how to do my job, and John also sends me lots of reminders on how to do my job. I like Bob. I don't like John. Bob means well. He's looking out for me. John is micromanaging me. And so, in both cases, though, to practice curiosity is try to find out the intent, to try to understand. Oh, I want to understand. You're sending me a lot of reminders. Can you share with me why? Yeah, I'd like to understand what's happening here.
Well, the other piece with that too, right, is that in the it's also your perceived uh, interpretation of the intent. And
Yeah,
so
and this
you
is
don't like
practicing
it,
inward
and sometimes
curiosity.
it's true, and this
Mhm,
happens in like personal relationships where you get in these routes with your spouse, whatever. And I've been through them. I'm sure we all have in relationships. Though is where you don't see that person in the best of light. You assume
mhm.
everything they do or ask or they open their mouth. Like I'm guilty. I've done it where I'm like, what? I'm like, I was just asking if you want to go. I'm like, oh, like it's the tonality because you've already presumed the intent of whatever's being said is going to be something negative, or it's going to be. And I think that's a very hard thing to work on. I think people keep it in check at work better because they don't get fired for being a pain in the ass or something like that. But uh, so for curiosity to happen, you have to be open reception that the intent is intended to be curious with the idea for collaboration. That's one half, if I'm understanding that correctly. Is that
It's
right?
to learn. It's to learn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's being open not to presume
Right. Mhm.
uh, intention and causality. but in that, that's the other half is actually to be curious, like to actually ask questions, to learn and do that. But then when you're opening it, is it still appropriate typically to be like, I'm not sure your intent of why? Is it to be that candid? Like, because we just described that scenario of the two people, that happens a lot. People
Mhm.
micromanage versus I'm being trying to be helpful. And sometimes they're trying to be helpful, but they're actually being micromanaging, or they're doing both. How do you address the intent then when you're confused? Is it
So I
direct? Is
think
it through
so I think
HR? I mean, how do you do it?
yeah, no, the first thing is actually before I even have that conversation is to ask myself why am I bothered by this?
Ah, that's
Because I
fair.
need to be able to explain that. So because so even just, oh, I'm triggered because I had someone who was really micromanaging in the past, or I'm concerned that people think I don't know how to do my job, or that I'm not responsible, and that's why they think that I need these
Yeah.
reminders, or did I do something in the past? So to be able to kind of know that story before I then have that conversation with that person, because sometimes we kind of just go in and just like, why did you do this? And I have to be why am I having the reaction I am, so that I can then share that with that person. And so, and Thomas, you asked me how to frame that question. I think there's so many different ways to frame questions. And so it's really up to you to decide what feels comfortable with you. And what I really recommend with to people is go and practice with someone. Go and
Well,
go and say, here, there are so many different ways. Even if it's just like, hey, I'm kind of feeling this. I notice that you keep sending me these reminders, and I'm worried that you think that I'm going to forget. Is that the case? So that's a leading question, yes or no. And then they can, there's so many different ways to enter that conversation.
well, no doubt. And I think one of the things you just said there was uh, you'd almost described imposter syndrome. So I think that drives a lot of people. And if you, and I understand, you may know it better than I do, but like this feeling that you're pretending to be in a role that you are, and you're pretending to know what you're doing. Um, Here's the thing I think I've learned from that. Most people don't know what they're doing. They just know it 1 or 2% better than you. And as a consultant for many years, that was the kind of the requirement. Now, if you got really good in an area, you certainly knew it better. You might be, you know this area, let's say at 90%, they know it not at all. But if you feel like you are an imposter, and you will lash out and be defensive in ways that you may see bad intent, because you're perceiving, once again, what people think. So a comeback though. Okay. So I think I've completely shot that horse and kicked it a few times, and maybe thrown it in a garbage disposal at this point. But uh, go back to how you enable curiosity as a function, as maybe part of your culture. So talk about the techniques of that, because that creates innovation, that creates people excited to share. But talk about the actual the
Yeah.
mechanisms of it.
So here's just some tips. First is just to pause. I think a lot of times people don't make space for that, practicing the inward curiosity, and also just to make sure it's okay to have conversations where people say, I don't know, can I come back to you? So for example, one of the things that we encourage in terms of getting feedback is it's so the people we're afraid of giving feedback because we're afraid that the other person's going to feel defensive. And so what I practice myself and what I encourage other people to practice is when you get feedback to say like, thank you for that. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
And then to go and do that inward curiosity on your own rather than trying to fix it. Oh, you gave me this feedback. I need to fix it right away, or I need to explain why you were wrong. It's just actually, I think all the time we can all benefit from, hey, thank you for that feedback. I just need some time to think about it. Can I get back to you? So that's one. The other one is so 70% of people say that they face barriers asking questions at work. And so there are lots of reasons for this. There can be fear of not being seen as not knowing or slowing things down. And so having the leader model, hey, what does that acronym mean? What does or can you give me an example of that? So for people to model asking questions is another way to have to encourage practicing curiosity. Another tip is for the leader actually to not do the facilitation in a meeting, and to give people a chance to rotate that role, and then people can see people can it does it does two things. One, it kind of diffuses that power dynamic. And two is it creates empathy in the facilitator, whoever is that, to understand, oh, wow, this is actually pretty hard. And there are different ways to do this too, to encourage that conversation. So those are just some tips on how you can practice curiosity at work.
Yeah, well, I think these are good, and it's shameless plug time. You got to tell people how to get a hold of you and where you want them. Well, who do you want to get a hold of you, and how should they do? I know you got a lot of social media, but if you had to pick one to come meet with you to learn how about
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way
LinkedIn for sure.
to connect with me. Yes. So please just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. I also have a YouTube channel, but like LinkedIn is the best place.
Yep. And you wanted to connect to your personal. Here's my real
Yes, yes,
question.
yes.
Your
Please connect. Yeah, my Julie Pham number 2. Yeah.
Julie fan number 2. Was there a number 1? And should we go talk to Julie fan number 1?
So
Why she took your I'm gonna have to
yeah.
have Julie fan number 1 on. Like you're
You
gonna
know,
have
I
to come
never
back.
actually looked up Julie Pham number 1. I think there's just a Julie Pham, and then I added the 2. So,
Julie fam double O respect.
yeah. So,
That's great. In your own world, fast forward to next year.
mhm.
What have you done or that to be most proud of? Like where do you take your company, and what are you gonna be proud of a year from now?
I really want to get everyone to full time. That's been my goal for a while. I have one full time person and a couple of part time people, and I really want to get people to full time for our business to be robust enough to support that. To be able to get our work out to more of our clients. I mean, yeah, we are still at the 300,000. I'd love us to get at the half a million mark.
Right.
Mhm.
What's what as an entrepreneur, what's your plan to do that?
So it is uh, to continue to tap into our networks, to continue to promote that. I think consistency is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned with marketing. It's just constantly to be out there and grow our clients, and also going back to our current clients and renewing those contracts.
Yeah. So that was actually the next question for you was, is your stuff more transactional in nature? Like you show up one time, that's it, or is it, ongoing
Yes.
support for the organization?
It is. So what we do is we say, here's our menu of all of our different offerings, and then we try to, what is it, land and spread in an organization. It's like, hey, we work with these teams, and now we want to go and work with other teams within this organization with these modules. So it's we don't do custom work. That's one of the things that I actually learned as an entrepreneur my first year. It's just I want to be able to scale the business, and so I want to be able to have more people do the certain things that we do. I have another facilitator right now who's also able to do that. And that way we can scale. It's not just me doing all
Right.
of this work. And eventually we want to get more facilitators who are taking um, our scripts and formula and doing it. And so we can do train the trainer. That's how I want to grow.
I like the idea of brainstorming when people haven't asked for it. So here we go.
Mhm,
I would say I look at your business from a
mhm,
marketing and distribution standpoint, and there's so much money that goes into CBTs and continuing education.
mhm.
Um, a digital course, if you don't have it already, that a company that can consume as part of continuing education or something like that would be a really good model because it'd be such a good top of funnel for you that you then say, hey, we go facilitate. And though it's not custom, there's nuance always.
Yeah.
So the program takes you through a journey, but we're going to notice different trees and flowers and leaks and streams and things in it along the way, right? Um, do you do anything like that though? Because it just seems like that's like a massive
Yeah,
market.
we actually do have a digital course, and right now we do it as added value. We haven't been able to figure out how to sell the course on its own. We built it so it could be like a do-it-yourself for small companies, and so, but now we just actually do it for because most of our money actually comes from our live workshops, and so then we add it as, hey, here's continuing education because we find a lot of people actually right now they're preferring that the
In person.
live sessions. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if we do virtual and in person, but just live.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I get that. And
mhm,
uh, I'm just thinking of marketing, like
mhm,
it just gives you such a great top of funnel of people, just to try it before you buy it and stuff. Are you
mhm.
doing anything speaking? Are you traveling, trying to do a
Yes,
speaker bureau? And so
yes.
tell me, did you get your first one booked? And if you did, how did you do it?
No,
And
actually, just last week, I had my biggest talk that was to a combined 2,000 people in New York. I
wow.
never thought I'd be speaking from a stage at Times Square, so that was really exciting. It was with an association, and so yes, so yes, I do keynote speaking on the 7 forms of respect and on curiosity. So I'd love to, anyone who's interested in that, we can do that with associations and also with organizations too.
That's awesome. See, I love that. You no chance, no chance you're not making $500,000 a year from now. No doubt. You're gonna make it. Why stop there? Let's just get to 1.2, 100,000 a month. That would be a good one for you. I think you'd be okay with that. And as an
I mean, no,
entrepreneur,
I mean, I eventually I want to be that 7-figure company. I'm just saying, but if you're saying like a year from now.
well, I mean, think about it. Like you started in 21, 22, 3 years in, that's good revenue. I don't know what you used to make as a executive, but that's probably not a small salary. And so relative to, and I one of the measures of success I always say is for entrepreneurship is if you can replace your W-2 salary with your own, you're killing it. Like you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not losing anything or any ground that you remind. But if you're an executive, it took you 20 years to become an executive typically. You're not going to do that typically in 2 to 3 years. And if you can, good for you. You should have done it earlier. But if it takes you a few and you get there, yeah, I mean, you're on a way to get to the financial rewards that justify the move financially, like all the other stuff. But I have confidence you'll do this. You're a doctor. You unless that's made up, you're smart. We're pretty sure of that. All right, so this is what we got from the conversation. We need to be more curious with respect, and we need less white guys writing books. Did I hear that?
No,
correctly?
not
Okay,
abundant.
get
Thomas,
that out of order.
please, more white guys write books. That's great. It's just also more women and more people of color write books too. There's abundance.
Okay.
Right? That's what you just described as scarcity mindset. I'm not saying, Thomas, when's your next book coming out? So
my next book is so the number one rule of writing is procrastination. That's what takes 95% of the time to write. I realized something. So my book is supposed to come out this year. It was supposed to come out last year too. But what I found was, even if I could put my head fully to it and I had the power of some AI to help, right? I don't have the capability to do what I wanted to do with the book. So I had to go and get a ghostwriter to help me talk about what it is, draw the stories out, the intent of what I'm trying to communicate and who it's for, and put it in some kind of storytelling fashion. And so I had to do a rewrite on what I wanted to do with it. So it got delayed, but as an author, it's important because this isn't like something you can delete, right? This is going to be printed, and it's going to end up on a discount shelf at Barnes and Noble, right? You see what I'm doing to myself. But anyway, yes. So I will go write a book just because you said it's okay to do so now. But at first, I was like, well, I got to.
No. It's abundance mindset. Abundance mindset.
People is a great way to go. Sometimes it's your upbringing that changes how you think about that. Like, like you said, like competitiveness, we never had money, but when you think of, hey, there is more, and it's kind of like love, right? Like there is endless amounts you can have, and there's endless amounts of those types of things. That exists in the world if you think of it that way. Like if I help others, I don't need them to help me, but they will. And if I need it as well. So that mindset is much more positive and one that is in growth and not a hoarding mentality of me. So it's outward facing. I love that. Thank you so much for joining, Dr. Julie Pham. I'm going to go do a little goodbye. I'm going to put you in the green room. It's called a blue room because it's blue behind me and there's nothing in there anyway, but I'll be right back. But thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone who's made it to the show today. I really appreciate everyone who likes and participates and interacts with the podcast and the YouTube channel. Listen, we're here to try to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship. We do this through some micro learning, micro mentoring, through just other entrepreneurs, things they're doing in the world. And my idea is to help you, cut that tie to all the stuff that's going to hold you back, that is holding you back. Either even your career, like even if you're not an entrepreneur, but just stop holding on to stuff that doesn't need to be held on to. Let it go, be freed from it, and go get out there and go unleash your entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I always ask at the end, if you got a minute, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you like the content on the podcast, please do a nice review. And if you don't like it, or you want to come on the show, either way, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can have a conversation. Thanks for listening. Until then, unleash your entrepreneur.